My name's Kim Hodges. I am the Director of Digital Accessibility at the University of South Carolina. This is a first video, so I apologize if it's a bit rough. I'm still getting the feel of recording in this format down. I originally planned to film outside because it's fall here in Michigan and it's actually quite beautiful, but there were dogs barking. So I took it inside. I'm just in my garage, nothing fancy. The reason we wanted to put these together is in the interest of communicating small bits of information about digital accessibility. Each one of the videos is going to be less than 10 minutes. The hope is to increase conversation and awareness and empathy around the subject matter. So, with that in mind, today, all I'm going to really talk about is what is digital accessibility and why it's important. And I'm going to talk about it less from the standpoint of compliance criteria or laws. And I'm going to talk more about it from the sense of human rights, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what that means as it relates to technology. So, when we think about technology, especially in the day and age we live in, we have a large reliance on it, whether that's our smartphone usage, to our online shopping habits, to paying bills online. My house, for example, is ran strictly through smart home functionality. So all of my home can pretty much be operated from my phone or from one of the hubs I have in my home. So when we start thinking about that, it's important to factor in other populations that might not be considered. And this is where digital accessibility becomes important. So, what does that mean? So, that means if you have a smart home, for example, that your smart home has accessibility options available. So, that means for people with visual impairments, it will have a screen reader option, whether that's through a touch interface or through a laptop interface or desktop for that matter. That means that a user with a visual impairment can actually hear audibly what's being presented on the screen through that screen reader. So when we start talking about the larger picture, it's really the great equalizer is what technology can be. So if it's things are programmed correctly, if things are designed properly, if that thought is put into it from the start, that means that individuals with varying types of disabilities will have the same access to all of the services and technology that we enjoy every day. And it also can level that playing field, per se. I've had conversations with individuals over the past 10 years about some of the challenges that they face. And one of the ones that I will use is Google Maps. For the longest time, Google Maps was completely inaccessible. Now they have a walking direction mode that integrated with screen readers allows a user with a visual impairment to actually use Google Maps as a way to track a route or plan a route and get from one place to another using that map system. There are other ones that exist, but Google Maps is a lot more readily available. The same can be said for Apple Maps and a lot of the integrated map systems that come on smartphones. Another example that people don't think of is paying bills or getting government services. If you go to a website to pay a bill, say it's your cell phone provider, but you can't actually get to the portion to pay your bill, whether that's because it doesn't allow for keyboard only navigation or it doesn't allow for screen reader navigation, then you're stuck. And if you're someone with a visual impairment and they send you a bill in the mail, that's not super helpful either if you don't have technology that can actually read that bill for you. So these are just simple day to day things that happen. So when we think about that and we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're talking about a minority group. And the interesting thing about disability is there are minority groups within minority groups. So if you have, for example, a person who has a visual impairment, is a person of color, and is also female by identification, then that person is three minorities all wrapped up in one. And frequently, when we think about those things, we focus on race, gender, even religion. But disability frequently gets left out of that conversation, even though they're their own group of people that deserves the same considerations. So when we think about courses, for example, it's easy to step aside and say, well, I don't have anyone in my course that has a disability or has registered with a disability, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a person in your course with a disability. What that means is that person just hasn't identified that to the university or made that known. And they shouldn't have to. If we follow common universal design principles, which I'll talk more about in another video, and we follow kind of best practices for design, we should be meeting the needs of that population. It's not something that we should have to go back and fix or go back and do later. If we do it from the start, not only does it actually decrease the amount of work that it takes and the amount of time that it takes, but we're also meeting the needs of all users without them having to ask for special consideration or accommodation. And that's really kind of when we talk about the human rights portion of it, that's really what we're addressing is from a human rights standpoint, individuals shouldn't have to ask for special accommodation or special requests based on a physical disability that they have. So when we follow those guidelines and the criteria that makes things accessible from a digital standpoint, we meet the needs of all users. And just kind of to wrap up, also when we do that, we're increasing the experience frequently for users without disabilities. If we're talking about development, user interfaces that are designed with accessibility in mind typically have a tendency to be a lot more user friendly for all people. The same goes for different design elements when we're talking about documents. If we're paying attention to the accessibility of it, it makes the readability of those documents better for everyone. And there, I could give you lots of examples and talk at length about that, but I'm going to keep it short today. So, with all of that in mind, really, I kind of jumped all over the place there, but the general sense of it is creating that equal experience for everyone, that equal and level playing field for everyone, and allowing everyone to be successful, whether it's in the mundane daily things that we have to do, like paying bills, or when it's in an educational sense and people are trying to better their lives through learning. That is why I work at the university, is because I feel it's so important for people with disabilities to get the same opportunities from an educational standpoint as anyone else. And in another video, I'll talk about why that's important. So I apologize again if this is a little scattered and not the greatest quality. It's my first attempt, but thank you for watching, and there will be more to come.